So one of my most frequently requested videos is ready to go. I'm going to show you how to set up Supabase with SvelteKit and Tailwind CSS. Let's get into it. What's up, everyone? My name is James Q Quick, and I do weekly videos on web development related topics. And recently I've been working a lot with Svelte and SvelteKit. I even did a video on YouTube of building a to-do app with SvelteKit where we saved all the information just in memory and local storage. And I asked you, the audience, if you're interested in setting it up with Supabase to store the to-do items and then adding Supabase authentication. And I got an overwhelming yes. So that's what we're going to do in this video, is set all that stuff up inside of the original to-do app. Now, if you haven't already completed the original to-do app and gone through that video, you'll have access in the link below to this GitHub repository that has all the final code with Supabase added, and then it has a branch for to-dos no Supabase. So that'll be the original source code if you want to start. That's where I'm going to start, and then we'll build up the Supabase part. Now, one last thing I want to mention is I am working on a course called Everything Svelte with my podcast co-host Amy Dutton, which will go much more in depth into SvelteKit and Supabase and Auth and Tailwind and GitHub Actions and lots of really cool stuff. So the landing page is there. You can sign up for updates with your email there right now. So go and check it out. There may be some issues if you're looking at the site on mobile. So give us a few days to get that worked out, but the regular site should be up and running on desktop. You can sign up for updates. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go and check out, let's check out the source code. So I've got open the source code, and if I look at the branch that I'm currently on, I've got the to-dos no Supabase branch checked out. So after I installed all the packages, I've already run npm install. You'll need to do that. Then we can run npm dev to get this up and running. And this should start running at localhost 3000. And if we open localhost 3000, we should see that our app hopefully is running here. There we go. And then if I add a new to-do and submit, it'll save here. I can toggle this thing completed and then delete it. And I think earlier I mentioned that this is in memory using local storage. It's actually just in memory. So if I were to add a new to-do and then refresh the page, that'll go away. So it's not actually working with local storage. It's just completely in memory. So that's where we want to start. We got the source code checked out. Now let's go ahead and move over to Supabase. And I'm going to need to go home in Supabase and create a new application. So I'm going to go, let's actually just start by logging in from supabase.com. Now this is free. You can sign up for free. After you do that, you'll go to sign in, and then we'll have to create a new project in here. So I've got a few, including that Everything Svelte landing page, and then the $holler is the example for that Everything Svelte course. So let's create a new project, and this will be a free tier. I've reached my free tier limit, rats. So let's go back, and I will delete the existing one that I have so that I can create a new one. So let's go ahead and delete this project. And this is SvelteKit to do app. This is what I get for building too many free demos. All right, so I just deleted a couple of my projects. Now I can come in and create another one on the free tier. So we'll say this is going to be the SK to do app. You'll need a password here. Just come up with whatever works for you. Let's see if that is going to be not bad, but your password must be harder to guess. Okay, let's see. So you got to create a pretty strong password there. That one should be good enough. Cool. Choose your region. What area of the world are you in? And then we'll do the free tier. So let's go ahead and create this. And then what we're going to do next is actually create our to-do table. So we're going to have to model that data inside of this database. And so in that to-do table, while this is loading, we will need only a couple of different properties. We'll need the actual text itself. Then we'll need a completed, which will be a Boolean flag. And then we'll need the user ID for the user who actually created it. Now we'll start without worrying about the user, and then we'll work on getting the user integrated as we add authentication. So let's look up the Supabase JavaScript documentation and see how we can start to add the Supabase client to your application. So this is the Supabase JS package. If you come and look for this, this will actually take you to GitHub, and it has the dependency here. So we'll copy that dependency, and then we'll come back to our application, we'll stop it, and we'll run the install command to install @supabase/supabase.js. And then once we do that inside of our source, we're going to need a supabase.js file. And our database is still loading, so we'll come back to that in a second. But inside of Supabase, we're going to import the create client. This is actually a named export. So we're going to get that from that Supabase package. So we'll get this from Supabase, Supabase.js. And then we're going to use that to export const Supabase to export the actual Supabase client. And we're going to call create client, and we're going to pass in the Supabase URL and the Supabase anon key. So an anon in this case means anonymous. So we need to actually create those two things, and we're going to get them from environment variables. And these are going to come based on Vite. They're going to be prefixed with Vite public. So SvelteKit is set up to run with Vite. So we're going to need to get these environment variables through that setup. So we're going to get the Supabase URL, and this is going to come from import.meta.env.vite public. There's the prefix, and then Supabase URL. Now we haven't actually created these variables yet, so we will need to. And I'm going to copy that, and then we'll have the Supabase anon key, and we're going to get this from Vite public Supabase anon key, as you would probably expect. So this is how we're going to get a reference to our environment variables inside of SvelteKit, which is using Vite behind the scenes. It comes from an import.meta.env and then the name of that variable. And then what you will do is go and create inside of the root of your project a .env file. And I'm going to copy this name and this name, and we will paste both of those in. So we'll have the public Supabase URL, and then we'll have the Supabase anon key. So those are the two properties that we'll need to actually configure Supabase. So let's go and take a look inside of Supabase again to see if this is done. It looks like that is done. And you can see that on that home page, on that first page, we've got our anon key. So anon key with Supabase means you can use this key on the front end. And the way it handles authentication, which we'll see, is basically, or security is based on the user. So making sure that you're tying some sort of read and write rules to the user itself. So we don't have to worry about a private API key. This can all be public. So I'm going to copy this anon key, and we will paste it into the .env. And then we will come down and grab the URL here. So the URL is a specific URL that's tied to our application that we created or our project, and we'll paste that in. So with those two environment variables, now we should be able to actually successfully create this client if we needed to. So we can test this by coming into our import, and we can grab a reference to Supabase. Now this is going to get an auto import in here, although I think it's going to be a little bit off. I don't really know why that is, but we'll go down to .. and then Supabase, and then make sure to specify JS in here. So just by doing that, that should give us our Supabase client. So let's test this out by running console log of Supabase inside of that layout file. This layout file is basically the parent of the different pages that we have, which we only have one. And the slot here is the placeholder for those pages. All right, so let's try this out. Let's do an npm run dev. All right, we'll come back to our local host. This should load up and look just the same. Hopefully what we'll see in this console is we'll see that we have a Supabase client that's logged out here. So there's our Supabase client, and it's got a bunch of different things that will work within a second. Good. All right, so the next thing we want to do is actually create our table for to-do. So we'll go into the table editor here on the left, and once this loads up, which is now, we'll create a new table. This will be to-dos. And then really cool, we can define the different properties right inside of here. So we're going to have the text property. There's text, and this will actually be of type text. So we'll have that one. We'll say that this one default value could be null. That's fine. Then we'll have a completed property. So there's completed. And we'll have, do we have Boolean in here? That we do. So bool. And then lastly, eventually we're going to have a user ID property. And the user ID will be a UUID. All right, so we'll just save that, and we should have our to-dos table created right here. The editor inside the browser is actually pretty nice. All right, so that thing has finished creating. Now, I guess the next step for us is to come in. We're not handling authentication just yet, but we're going to open up the to-do store. And right now, again, this is just adding this stuff to memory. So it creates this to-dos inside of the store, writable, that can be shared across all our components. And then we have functions to work with those different pieces of the store. So inside of here, what we'll want to do is grab a reference to our actual Supabase client and then use that. So let's grab Supabase from, I should have probably done a default export, but that's okay. From our /Supabase, and then we'll add in our .js. All right. Now you can look for the documentation on how to work with this, but what we're going to do is inside of our add to do, we are going to say await, and we're going to say Supabase dot from. So we say what table we're working with, so the to-dos table, and then we'll do select. And actually, I meant to do this inside of our load to-dos, which it looks like we haven't created. That's what we actually need to do first. Sorry. So we'll move that. We'll create our function export. We'll actually export this one and const load to-dos, and then we'll say this is an async function with no parameters, and then we'll go inside of here and copy over this code. So we have our load to-dos function. This is going to call when the layout loads. We'll say we want to select everything from this to-dos table. And then what does that return? That returns to us an object with properties of data and error. So we'll await for that response to come back. We can then check if there is an error. Then we're not going to do a whole lot here, but we will just return console.error of that error. So we'll at least see it on the console. And then lastly, we'll take our to-dos and set them to the data that comes back. All right, so that will allow us to load these to-dos. Now, if we wanted to add a to-do, it'll be something similar. So we'll say await supabase.from, so which table to do. And then we want to insert, and we'll insert an array of records, which in this case will just be one. And that record will have a text property and a user ID property. We don't have user ID yet, but we'll just go ahead and update this function to accept that parameter. And we can set a null default value of test, for example. All right, and then we'll get the same thing back. So we can actually copy the rest of this line and say, hey, we're going to get data back after that call. If we have an error, we'll do the exact same thing. You'll see a couple of these things are a little repetitive. Oops, not there, but down here. All right. And then this needs to be marked as an async function as well. So we'll have the async function. We'll get back that data. And now we want to update with the, we'll take the current value of what's in the to-do. So we'll say to-dos.update. We'll grab the existing value. We'll spread those out, and then we'll add in this new record. And that's going to be data of 0. And that's, I believe, all we need to do. We could shorten this and have it be, could have it just be in line, I believe, with an implicit return. So we could do this, a few thises, and then we'll have that set up. So that should be our add to do. And then again, just a couple more examples. I'm actually going to copy this one over for a little bit of brevity. So let's just copy the delete over. Same kind of thing here. We're going to grab the error. We don't need any data that comes back from the supabase.from, which table. We want to delete, and then we want to match based on the ID. So we're looking for the ID of that to do, and we want to delete based on that. If there's an error, return it. And then I think we'll just keep the same update of our stuff that's in memory. And then the last one is we will do almost the exact same thing for our update, except we're going to do an update. We'll update the completed property to be the opposite of the current state, and we'll need to pass that one in. So we're going to tell this what the current state is, whether it's completed or not. So we're going to update it to be the opposite of that. We'll make sure this is marked as async as well. We'll get back there. If there is an error, we'll return it, and then we'll kind of update this stuff in the exact same way that we were already. So we're just kind of leave that stuff there. We're just throwing in the Supabase stuff on top of it. Last thing I didn't mention is it does the match based on the ID. So again, if you're selecting which records to delete or update, you want to do a match to tell it, hey, in this case, I want to match it by the ID itself. All right, I don't have a better way to edit this in, but I just got a haircut that you can probably notice. Let's go ahead and keep working on what we're building. So that should do it for the Supabase integration with our to-do store. What that means is now we should be able to go over to the browser. Let's just refresh the app to make sure we're good. And now we should be able to add a new to-do inside of here and click submit on this. And we see our new to-do come through. And then we can do all the things that we would want to, like select it to toggle it as completed and delete it as well. Now we probably want to do this again and then verify that this is actually inside of our database inside of Supabase. So let's open this up. Let's look inside of the table editor and then look inside of the to-dos table. And hopefully what we'll see is that we have inside of our to-dos, we have the to-do populated in here. There it is, new to-do number 2. And it has a default value of null for the Boolean, which is okay. And then we have our user ID here. And then what we should see is if we come back and toggle this to be completed, we should see now that this has a new value for completed to be false instead, or excuse me, true, because we toggled it to be true. So it's setting to null by default. We could set that to false by default. We could actually go in and make that update now. So if we come in and choose our text, we can say that the completed property is also going to be false by default. So that will wrap up the integration of Supabase in terms of working with our data for the most part, but now we need to add authentication. So let's start by creating a new component for auth. And this is basically just going to be like our login component for auth. And inside of here, we'll go ahead and get our script, and we'll want to import Supabase like we did before. So we'll go ahead and import Supabase from the supabase.js file. And this is basically, like I said, going to be a login form. So we're going to have a property we'll have a loading property set to false, and then we'll have a let email just starting off by default. So we're going to bind to the email variable inside of our form. So let's come down to our actual HTML here. Now let's add an h1 tag, and we'll just say this is going to be login. Have this be 2 words. And let's go ahead and add our Tailwind classes here. Class, this is not React, this is Svelte, so we can use class. We'll say this is going to be text 2XL, font bold, text center. We'll make it a dark gray, so gray 800. And then on medium, we'll have this bump up to be text 3XL. So it'll be a little bit bigger on medium screens and above. All right, so that's our just our title here. And then we want to add in, I guess I can add in a little info for like, here's how we're going to log in. So we'll just do text center and then a margin top of 2. And we're going to use magic links. We'll come back to that in a second. We'll say sign in via magic link with your email below. All right. And let's go into our layout. Let's go ahead and show this so we can kind of see what this is looking like as we move along. So inside of here, we want to add our auth component. I don't know if I'm going to get, looks like I may not get the auto import there. So let's go and import auth from, and we'll go into components and auth.svelte. So import that thing, and hopefully if we save this, we should just see it pop up with just that H1 and then the title here. So we're gonna show and hide the login option, depending on if the user is actually logged in. So this stuff won't go together, but we'll just have it there mixed for now. Now inside of here, we're gonna have a form. We're gonna get rid of the action. We will actually set the on submit. So we'll set the on submit, and then we'll use the pipe for prevent default. This will do event.prevent default, which is really cool. And we'll call handle login here. So let's go and create our handle login. And this is going to take in, actually we have a reference to the value for the email. So we can just log out email here. And then we'll use that Supabase client to actually trigger the login. I guess we can go ahead and do this as well. So we can say await supabase.auth.sign in, and we're going to sign in and pass in that email property. So by default, it does the sign in via email. Now, since we want to use async await, we'll wrap this or mark this as async. And then we'll also set up a try catch in here. I've got a little snippet to help with this. So let's move these into the try. Let's do the await. And then what we'll get back from this, we'll get back an error if there is one. If I could type in const, there we go. We'll get back an error if there is one as part of that object. And if there is, we'll just say if there's an error, we'll throw the error. We're not going to do a whole lot of fancy stuff here. And then lastly, we'll just go ahead and alert and say check your email for the login link. Now, this part is kind of from their documentation. I think it's a blog post that I found. So it's pretty straightforward with what they have. So you can do something else if you wanted to. Inside of the catch, now we'll, if something goes wrong, we'll alert, and we'll alert the error, if I can speak English. And we will log out the error description, or if there is not a description, we'll do the error.message. And actually, I did this as ERR, so we'll update that to be error and error here. So if there's an error that comes back, in this case, we'll log it. If there's a error that gets thrown that we don't, that triggers this catch, we'll handle it down here. And then we'll have in our finally, we'll set the loading to be false. So the first thing we'll want to do is when we try this, we'll set loading to be true. So that's going to be our login piece here. Not too bad. So let's scroll down. Let's minimize this a little bit. We'll actually fill out our form in here. So we're only going to have one input. So we're going to wrap that label and input inside of a div. So we'll have the parent div up here. Then we'll have the label. All right. And then we'll have the input itself type of text. So let's go ahead and start to set these up. So inside of our div, we'll set this as flex and flex column, and then text small, and then margin bottom of 2. So it's going to be just a wrapper for our input, our label and input. Our label will have class of font bold. It'll be margin bottom of 2 and text gray 800. All right. And our label will say email. All right. So that green should go away. Maybe not. Let's see what's going on here. A form must be associated with a control. Yes. So we'll have our name property is going to be email, or actually that will be the for property inside of our label. There that is. And then the input, it will have the name of email. All right. And then we'll have a few properties, a few classes in here. So we'll have appearance, none, shadow, small, have a little bit of a shadow. We'll have a border. We'll have a gray border gray to not border gray, border gray 200. Padding 2, we'll have focus, outline, none, focus, border gray 500, and rounded large. I like how Tailwind allows you to do all this stuff right in our CSS classes. So this is saying when we're in the focus state, we'll set no outline, and then we'll add an extra, change the color of the border when we're in focus. All right, a couple of other things that we'll need inside of this input. We'll need a placeholder. We don't have to have one, but we can add your email. And then we'll also want to bind to the value of email. Now this will give us access to the email in that function that we created above, where we pass it into our sign-in function. And the last thing we can add is a type of email. All right, so that is going to be, do we already have, we already have type of text. So we can update this to be type of email. All right, and then we'll need our button. So we'll need a button right below this input combination, label and input. And this will be, I don't know why this isn't wrapping down to the next line, but we'll have a type of submit. And then we'll have a few classes on this one as well. It'll be a width full, so we'll just make it a full width button. We'll do shadow small again. We'll do rounded. We'll do BG blue 500, so we'll give it a small button. On hover, we'll do BG blue 600, so just change the background a little bit. We'll set the text to be white. Padding Y of 2 and padding X of 4. And then this should say inside of here, log in. All right, let's see. I believe that is all we need. So let's go and see if this thing is rendering out correctly. It matches what we've got down here, which is kind of what we wanted. And then I'm going to set the email in here. Click login. Hopefully it'll come up and tell us, hey, you should have a login link. Let me open my email and we'll try to come back and log in. All right, so this is presenting me with a confirm my email. The first time you do this, you'll get a confirm your email. It actually brings me back to the application, but you'll see that nothing changes. And that's because we're not actually detecting the state change for the user. So now that we have the ability to log the user in, we need to actually track that state. So we're going to create a new store in here called auth store. Now this is going to be really simple, and maybe it's a little bit of overkill in this case, but I think it's a good habit to get into. So we're going to import writable from Svelte store, and we're going to create one piece of data that we're going to track. We're going to export const user equals writable, and we could set the default to like whatever. But we'll use this writable for now. Writable is not defined from Svelte store. That's because we don't know how to spell. All right, so we're going to keep track of this user inside of the store inside of Svelte. Now, what Supabase gives us access to is we have hooks to decide whether or not the state has changed for the user. So we want to track this across, in theory, if we had multiple pages, or in this case, we just have one, but we can do this inside of that parent component, which is the layout file. So since we have, we've imported Supabase already, we said we were going to use that, I think. We've imported that auth now, or the auth component. Let's also import the user property from the store's auth store. So we'll grab that thing. And then the first thing we want to do is update that user property with the logged in user inside of Supabase. So we can grab this from supabase.auth.user. That's how we get it. And then we want to use that to do a set on the user that we keep track of. So set in here. Now we don't necessarily have to create a store, although I think it's convenient inside of Svelte as a framework to be able to convert the stuff that Supabase gives us into the stuff that kind of works with Svelte. So that's why I'm using the store here. So the first thing we'll do is actually go and update the user inside of our store with the auth, with the user that comes back from Supabase. Now, the other thing is what happens if the user actually logs in or logs out? Well, we'll do supabase.auth.on auth changed, and we will say this is going to be a function. We don't need the first parameter, so we can do an underscore. And then the second, I don't know what that is. The second one is the session. And then inside of this callback function, what do we want to do? Well, we can do user.set for session !user. So if there is a session, we'll go ahead and set the user property to that there. And additionally, if there is a session.user, I'm getting all sorts of bad IntelliSense. If there is a session, now we want to load those to-dos. Now, eventually we'll have these be associated with the user themselves. It's not yet, but it will be. So we first grab the existing, the user, whether or not they're logged in when the page or the application loads. Then we detect changes based on the user. So let's log out the supabase.auth.user. We'll log this when we start our application, and we should be able to see the user. Let's see what error we're getting here. Oh, bad IntelliSense here from stores to do store. All right, let's save. All right, let's go back to our application. We'll see the same thing because we haven't actually changed anything. And if we look inside of our console, do we see an actual user? Let's refresh this just to check. There's our user. So we get that user from Supabase, and now we're tracking this inside of our user store so we can access this anywhere. That's great. Now we need to actually decide if the user is logged in, we want to display not the auth, we want to just display the page. Otherwise, we want to display that auth login. So we can do this with an if inside of Svelte, where we do if, and then we say if user. So if there is a user logged in, we'll show a nav bar. We need to create this, and then we'll have our slot. So nav bar will basically just have like a logout link in it. And then else, we will do our auth. So we'll tab that over. I always forget the syntax for this, but it's /if. All right, so if there is a user, we'll show the nav bar and the slot, which is the page component. If there's not, we'll show the auth. So we'll only show them information other than login if they are logged in. So to do this, let's go and create our navbar.svelte. And let's go ahead and fix this import in here so we go ahead and have it. So we'll import navbar from .components. And then we want it from navbar.svelte. All right, so let's go and do this navbar, and it's going to be relatively simple. We'll open up our script here. And we want to import Supabase from .supabase.js. And really all we're doing is defining our logout function, which is a function that will logging out. God, that's redundant. We could actually kind of get away from this, but in case we wanted to do more during logout, we could. And then call auth.signout. So that's all we want to call. And then we'll just create a div in here. And this div, again, this is going to be pretty simple, but inside of our div, we will give it a bit of styling. We'll say margin Y is 4, we'll set flex, and then justify end. So this will push everything to the end. And then inside of here, we'll basically just have one button. So this button will say log out, and the on click will call log out. And maybe put this on a new line. The other thing we want is our class. So let's move some of this around. Maybe this is too much. Maybe this is overly formatted. I don't know. But then we'll have our class. And so we'll do a shadow, a small shadow, rounded. You've seen this before. BG blue 500, hover, BG blue 600, text white, PY2, and PX 4. So that'll just be our log out button if the user is logged in. So I think this should, if we refresh, is it now? So it's showing my to-dos and it's showing this logout button. If I log out, it now tracked that change. And now if I try to log back in, it will send me another magic link. It should tell me, nice. I'll actually get this in my email and I'll have to refresh to show the latest one. Or it's actually a different email because anyway. So now I can click the login. Now I'm in and it shows to-dos. It's actually querying that to-do that we already have saved. So we've got the ability to track the user. Now the only thing we have left is to only allow a user to view their own to-dos. So one of the things I want to change to make this a little bit easier, I think inside of authentication and settings maybe, I'm going to have to try this with another email to show you how this works. But I'm going to disable double confirm email changes, enable email sign up. I'm going to disable enable email confirmations. So I'm going to get rid of that. I think if I can click on it, there we go. And that's saved. So now when I do the second email, I won't have to go back and forth. Now, the other thing we want to do is inside of, let's see, our authentication and policies, we want to make sure, oh, actually, I guess we should show this first. The problem that we have that we want to fix is if I were to say, this is James to do, and I create this, it saves in Supabase, great. But if I were to log out and I were to try to log in with James at compress.fm with a different email, I'll be able to view all of them as well. So I'll go through this process and log in with that one to show you. All right, so I just opened up my compressed email and I have this magic link. I can go ahead and log in, and as you'll see, it's gonna show me all of the to-dos, not just the ones that are for me. So I want these to only be for myself, not for anyone else. Now the cool thing, and I'll let me do a search, Supabase security roles. John Myers, who is working at Supabase, who is great, has a tutorial on the role level security with Supabase, and it's great. You should check it out. That's basically what we're going to do here, where we can define these rules inside of Supabase to say, hey, only the user that owns that record should be able to delete a record or update a record or view the record. So to do that, we can go inside of Supabase. We can enable RLS. Now, by enabling RLS, by default, it's not going to let anybody have access to anything. And we can see that inside of, notice I've got all these localhost tabs. We can see that inside of here. By now, when I refresh, I see no data. That's because it's locked down. Now we need to define a policy for who can access what. So we can create a new policy. Let's go from a template. Let's say enable delete access for user based on their user ID. We're just choosing this as a template. So let's go ahead and use that. And then what this is saying is, let's go ahead and check all. We're only going to let a user select records that they own. We're only going to let them update or delete records that they own. And this check is going to come from the UID of the logged in user. This is behind the scenes that's taken care of for us, and the user ID property of that record. So remember, we created the user underscore property or column inside of our to-dos model. So if we copy this, since we're doing all of these, we need to copy it down for the with check. And we can review and we can save this policy. And boom, that's really all we have to do. This is the last piece. So if we come back to our application, I say this is the last piece. There's one extra thing we have to change. If I refresh, I still see nothing. And the reason is that we're not actually, if we go back to the to-do store, we're not actually setting that user ID. So let's go ahead and pass this in. And I'm going to underscore this just because this property is underscored in our table. And this way I can just pass in and not have to type the name twice. So let's do that. And then inside of our let's see, our form, what is it? Yeah, to-do form. Let's grab our user. So import user from the stores. And then we'll grab the auth store.js. And let's just pass in the, to access the actual value, we do $ and then user and then .id. All right, so that should allow us now to associate this record with this user and see that in the database. So we'll say this is a compressed to do because this is from my compressed email. We should submit that. Notice I can view it. I can also update it. That works. And if we go back to our data inside of the SQL table editor and load in our to-dos, we should see that to-do comes through and it's associated with the user ID, which is me, which means, and again, I've got plenty of tabs open here, that if I were to log out and then log in with my other email, all right, so that original email, so let me go back and open that magic link. By the way, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of magic links. This is usually, people seem to really like them. It's kind of an interesting flow. But notice when I log in now, I don't see the other to-do that the other person just created. So this is James's to-do, and I can still see all that stuff. I can delete it, it goes away. If I log out one more time, you'll probably get tired of this. And then do the James at compressed email again. Compressed FM is the podcast that I run that you should go check out. Let's do one more magic link from the compressed email. Let's open this. We should see not the one we just created, but the one we created before, which is the compressed to do. So that is SvelteKit and Supabase, and also setting up authentication with Supabase. Inside of the Everything Svelte course, we're going to go much more in depth into all of that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and that course is interesting to you. So right now we, at the time of this video, you can sign up for updates about the course and be notified when it's getting ready to launch and maybe get a couple of sneak peeks along the way. So make sure to check that at everythingsvelte.com. Also check Amy and I out on our podcast, Compressed FM. In the meantime, if you have any additional questions or tutorials that you'd like to see with SvelteKit in particular, and maybe Supabase, let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you as always for checking out the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.